All right, this is a eulogy, I guess, to Jim Shooter, former editor in chief of Marvel Comics. Then he went over the Valiant. Then he did Defiant. Then he did Broadway. He never fired up Daring Comics, which was going to be like small press runs. He was going to write the comics and then be paired up with an artist. So anyway, it's the 30th of June, 2025, and the news broke today, courtesy of Mark Waid. He was a friend of Jim Shooter. They used to have dinner together, and Waid was a longtime fan of his. And they used to have dinner a lot at these cons and stuff like that. And he passed away from esophageal cancer. He was 73 years old. And he took a leave of absence last year. He's been doing for like the last 2 or 3 years. He's been doing a lot of Comic-Con appearances. And last year he took a sabbatical and he just said, I got some health issues and I'll be back. Okay. When he came back, his first couple videos that like interviews and stuff like that, people had him at these different Comic Cons. He looked really, really gaunt. And I looked at one of the videos and I told one of my friends that that's the same look that my uncle had when he had chemotherapy. So I says my best guess is he was fighting some kind of cancer, and it came out today that he had esophageal cancer. He kept it quiet, which was, that's his own thing. That's his privacy. But he worked up until the end. I guess he was working for that Illustrated Media, where they would do like advertising comics and stuff like that. And the one thing I regret was back in the early 2000s, I shot this quasi documentary shoot interview with Dan the Beast Severin. Okay. Now, this thing, to in all of the stuff I've ever done, this is the gold standard. I mean, I've given that thing to people that they're blown away when they see it. One of my friends I used to work with, he looked at it and he says, "This is TV quality work." And he was like, "What are you doing working with me, doing a job that we did at the time, And I says, "Well, you got to know people to break in, right?" Okay. So back then, like around 2002 to 5, around that time period, I was trying to sell that or get it distributed, mass distribution. And one of the things was I knew Jim Shooter had contacts in the entertainment field, okay? So I didn't know how to approach him, and I didn't have a contact number or nothing, but I knew who to talk to him. Now, Chuck Rosansky from Mile High Comics they were best friends, and they used to talk all the time, and they used to be business partners, and they tried to buy Marvel at one point in the late 90s. So what I did was I sent an email to Chuck Rosansky explaining, what I wanted to do, and I says, if you could forward this to Jim Shooter, I'd appreciate it. If he never answers me back, okay, fine. If he answers me back and says maybe I could help you or whatever, I would like to cut him in on whatever. If he could sell it for me or knows somebody that could broker a deal, I would give him like a finder's fee. And he emailed me back. Shooter emailed me back and he says, "No, I don't know anybody that would handle this." So I was like, okay. But I kept in contact with him, which was probably, looking back at it, he's probably like, who's this idiot that keeps sending me an email every once in a while? But he would answer me back, and he was always very nice. And and I told him right out. I go, "You're my favorite comic book writer of all time," because he did the Secret Wars in 1984. So I was 10 years old, and and he kept Marvel going in the 80s, late 70s, or up until like 88. And his stuff was great. all of that stuff coming out of there was fantastic. And I told him that, and I know that he gets a lot of heat on the internet because, well, he was the boss. And when the boss has got to tell people the word no, they get mad. So a lot of people got mad at some of the stuff that he did. But later on, he explained his point of the story, his side, like, okay, this is what this guy wanted, and this is why I had to shoot him down. And you're like, okay. And there's a lot of people that were mad at him back in the 80s that made up with the guy later on. So, I mean, it couldn't have been that bad. I mean, most people hold grudges. But the one thing I'm regret not doing is I had this idea to do this thing. I called it the Never Ending Shoot Interview. And basically, because I know this guy's history up and down, I wanted to either do where I email him like once a week or twice a week with some questions. And he just sends me back the answers. And if there's a question that he doesn't want to answer, because he's either going to get sued or somebody's going to cause some heat, he just say, I'll pass on that one, And I look back at it now, I wish I would have did it as a YouTube page. Like, 5-10 minute video, you do it over Skype or something like that, or whatever. Skype's gone away or whatever the connection is on the internet now to do live videos. But the lesson here is if you have an idol or somebody you like or something and you got an idea for a project, it doesn't hurt not to approach them, and I did the same thing with Shane Douglas. Never heard nothing back from the guy. So it's the same kind of deal. Either he's not interested or, and in that respect, what I would do is I wouldn't just blow it off. What I would do is I'd be like, I want to know some more things like, you ask questions like, just because somebody offers you a deal, do a counter deal or say, well, I want to know something about this, stuff like that, we never even talk money. So that, and Jim Shooter, that's why I never approached the guy, because I figured that here's a guy that was dealing with, $1 million companies and stuff like that. He got ripped off on Defiant. They had the thing like 7.5 million or 15 million. I mean, I'd have to go back and read the article. That's 30 years ago, but it was big money. So I'm like, I obviously I can't offer him that kind of cash. So I go, he ain't gonna want to do a deal like that. And then I find out, like, recently he was doing a lot of comic projects for free just to help people out. So, like a consulting deal, writing deal, editing deal. He did a lot of small press books. And when the guy was like, well, how much do you want to do this? He's like, just keep your money. And, and then when Marvel came around and they had to get him to sign off on the Secret Wars and stuff like that, so they could make a movie. And he didn't want to take any money from them. And they're like, no, we have to pay you something. We have to have that on paper that you gave this up. And he's like, look, I know how this works. It was all work for hire back then. So you guys own it anyway. And they said, well, we have to get something on paper that you basically, so you can't sue us later. So the one guy told him to take the money, and he got a check for like 10 grand. But he's like, I shouldn't have got that because I knew going in that it was work for hire. So, what I would like to say is, I'd like to say that condolences to his friends and family. This one's hard because I liked his work. Everything he did was good. He never phoned in work. And writing, the guy could draw. He did some drawing and stuff like that, and he used to do some breakdowns when he started. And the guy started when he was like 13 years old for the Legion of Superheroes. and writing Superboy stories and stuff like that. So I mean, child prodigy. He never went to college. He worked for DC for a couple years, and then, when he got out of high school, he disappeared for a couple years, and then the fandom sought him out, and then he came back to comics, and then he said it was a better fit at Marvel than DC at the time, and then he went through the ranks at Marvel. And who's to say that Marvel would be around today if it wasn't for him? As they were talking about shutting it down in '78. And the thing that saved them was the Star Wars comic book rights that Roy Thomas was pushing on everybody to take. So that's another video down the line where what if another company would have taken the Star Wars comic book rights? But look up Jim Shooter, look up his accomplishments, look up everybody that had beef with the guy. But, this is, I guess, a celebration of life because he's probably my favorite comic book creator of all time. And this one hurts is when your childhood's going down the drain. It's like, wow. I'm just like, when I seen that, because I saw some videos of him, and like I said, he looked gaunt, and I'm like, he's got cancer. And he came back, I'm like, okay, maybe he beat it, and then it must have flared up again. But Godspeed to Jim Shooter. I hope he's okay wherever he's at. And pick up some of his work. Look him up and read some of his stuff. It was really good. Even stuff like Secret Wars 2, who a lot of people hate. I don't think it was that bad. But they really couldn't follow Secret Wars 1. Let's just put it that way. But they tried to expand it with including the C and B characters that weren't in the first one. But yeah, check it out. Like I said, there's no words. It's just shocking, And everybody's gonna face this at some point in their lives, and you hope it ain't, you go out on your terms. So I hope he was okay and everything, and I'll miss his stuff, and I'll miss his YouTube videos, as that was basically the only way of seeing new stuff with him anymore. Everybody have a great day.